So I'm going to try to repair this Deebot, Ecovacs Deebot, which has a error message about the main brush being jammed, but the main brush is quite clean, and I suspect it's actually the motor drive which is jammed. So you can see the main brush looks fairly clean, and I checked it, but it turns very hard. So the motor, I believe, is over here, and going to be disassembling this first, taking off this rim, this bumper piece, and then unscrewing all of the screws on the base to get the lid off and access to the motor. So the first piece that comes off is the bottom piece of the bumper, which is where all the screws mount, and then now the bumper can be released, and you can see there's a single connector to disconnect from the bumper. So there's 8 screws remaining after you get the bumper off to be able to remove the cover from the top. And that's what it looks like with the cover off. And here's the motor assembly that we're going to be disconnecting and looking for debris which is clogging it. Actually, there's a 9th screw on the bottom to fully release the motor assembly. That screw goes into this boss there. And then you just disconnect the motor. And now you have access to the motor. Now we need to look inside, see what's slowing this thing down. Getting the cover off the motor, there isn't any debris like I had found the last time I fixed this, but the little pinion gear that you see there is very difficult to turn. So there's something in there jamming up the pinion gear. Okay, there's some hair that's stuck underneath the pinion gear, and now it moves a little bit more freely, but it's still very stiff, so I wonder if that's really enough to fix it. So using some WD-40 and a razor blade and some compressed air, I was able to work on that space between the pinion and the motor and free it up, so it's spins much freer right now. The motor goes back into its assembly with those 2 screws with washers. There's also Loctite that was used in the assembly to keep those things from backing out. Then you assemble the rest of the cover on the motor here with those 4 screws, and then plug the motor back in. There's a ridge on the connector that faces upwards in the center, and then screw the motor back in. There is the bottom screw of the motor. Top screw's already on. I forgot to mention you do have to take the brush out before you disassemble everything. Next, you plug in the front bumper and plug in that little connector that we saw earlier. And then the front bumper bottom bracket or plate will be fastened, and that will finish the reassembly, with the exception of putting in the brush and in the dustbin. And then we'll see if it works.